today's Ruptured Duck podcast. Ruptured Duck podcasts are looking at disability and accessibility in the arts. Now, on today's show, we have actor Mark Beer, and I'll be speaking to Mark in a moment. Mark was originally from Birmingham, and his acting career began at the age of 17 when he was awarded a bronze medal at the Cheltenham Literary Festival for the role of Romeo in Romeo and Juliet. He then trained at City Literature Institute in London. In 2017, Mark was nominated by BBC Radio Drama for the Norman Beaton Fellowship Award. He's been a professional actor for some 30 years now. He's played many stage and screen roles. Thank you for joining us, Mark. You've had quite an illustrious career so far. It's not over yet by a long shot, I'm sure. But can you just tell me how it all started? When did you first realise that you wanted to be an actor?
Thank you very much for having me, Sophie. And I would definitely say that it began very, very early at school, really. I went to a special school because of my disability. I was born with cerebral palsy. And I can remember from about 7, taking part in the school. That's very early. Taking part in the school play. And then at 15, I was cast as Macbeth in Shakespeare's Macbeth. And from then on, I really knew that that's what I wanted to do, really.
Well, Macbeth at 15, that's quite something to take on, isn't it? So, as someone, you've mentioned your disability, as someone with a disability, what challenges did you face in those earlier years wanting to become an actor? Did you face lots of challenges?
Initially, I thought, well, the best route for me is to go to drama school.
Yeah.
So not unlike yourself and other people that I've heard of from the profession, I knocked on the door of RADA and all the main drama schools, and all the top 3 basically said, you are talented enough to go to work. We're not accessible for you. So I suggest that you go to work and learn on the job, which is basically what I did from the age of 17.
Well, that is brilliant that you took that on the chin, as it were, you know, and shocking though it is that somewhere wasn't accessible, but I guess that was a number of years ago now.
Quite a long time.
Not saying you're getting on in years, of course, but I know I was probably around at the time having much the same experience, and I was even told that they wouldn't encourage me to go into a career where there wasn't going to be that much work for me. That's how blunt it was. So
they were very nice and they were very kind, but they were very honest and direct. And they said, you know, there's no way we can train you. So, and you already have a natural ability, so go out there and work, which is exactly what I did.
Well, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Were you, are there any points along the way where you were either encouraged or discouraged from sort of pursuing things?
No, not really. I have a very supportive family, and they supported me enormously. And I worked continuously from 17 till I was 27 without a break. And it was telly, film, theatre, everything, all right across the board. I learned so much in that short space of time because I literally did everything that was thrown at me.
And that is, I think, testament to you in that determination that despite not being able to get the formal training, you still thought, I'm going to do this. You know,
I did take advice from a very dear friend of mine, an actress called Catherine Schofield, who is no longer with us. A beautiful lady inside and out, who took me under her wing when I met her in my early 20s. And she encouraged me to go to the professional acting class at the City Lit, which is what you mentioned. So all the way through from my early 20s to my mid 30s, I trained my voice every Friday in a professional acting class. And as a result of that now, it stood me in very good stead, really.
Brilliant. Now, one of your first roles, or one of your earliest roles on TV, I think, was Play Days.
Hello? Anyone there? Hi.
Hey, you can't park there.
Sorry, why? I'm Mark. I've come to tell the story.
Oh, Mark! How exciting. Make yourself at home. Hey, Simon, it's Mark. He's come to tell a story and he's brought his buggy. Have a drink of juice.
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
You got here all right?
Of course he did, Simon. If he didn't, he'd still be outside.
Well, no, why? It can be quite difficult getting around in a wheelchair.
You can have a bit of bother when you're in a wheelchair. Tony had a bit of bother.
Tony?
That's the boy in the story I'm going to tell.
Oh, the story! Oh, how exciting. Bring your buggy in and come and tell us.
Do you need a hand, Mark?
No, I'll be all right. But I may need a hand to tell the story.
Oh, I'd love to give an hand to tell the story.
Well, then, you can be Auntie Barbara.
Auntie Barbara! Oh, Simon, Auntie Barbara. Come on, give us an hand to get me bits.
You were one of the first disabled performers, I believe, to present a children's TV show.
I believe I was on at the BBC at that time, yes.
Yeah, so how was that? What was that like?
Really, like I said, so I was working continuously. I was not just doing that. I was doing plays in the evening and touring the country and then going back into recording that in the daytime. My days were chock-a-block. It was so busy that my agent used to ring up on a daily basis and say, "Do you know where you're going today?"
Was it fun being on a children's show? Were you nervous about being with children, or?
I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I did it over a 5-year period. I started at 22 and the last one I did was when I was 27.
Yeah, that's quite a good stint, isn't it?
I had a lovely time. And the director, Brian Jemison, is still a very good friend of mine and called me back in to read for Balamory because he recently did Balamory. And eventually the role went to a nice Scottish lady who lives just round the corner from Scotland, where it was filmed, of course.
Yeah, are you talking about Kim?
Yes.
Yes, I remember seeing Kim on Balamory. But you have appeared on many TV shows. Do you want to talk about any of those? I mean, tell us what it's like being on TV show sets as a disabled person. Are there certain dynamics, any difficulties you've had or experienced?
In the early days, everyone on the sets were learning, just as I was learning, because when I was doing the children's telly, and at the same time I was recording a drama series called Specials, between 24 and 25 I was, and it was for 12 months, and I was recording that and recording play days and it was just mad. It was just really busy and mad. And I just remember that from the access point of view of getting around, from getting into the makeup van, all of those things, they didn't know about employing someone with a disability, because again, I was the first disabled actor to be employed as a regular person, a regular character, sorry, in a regular series. So I was learning and they were learning. Hence the reason why I literally got the chance to be interviewed by the world, really. It was like I was the face of the... You were
treading new ground, literally, weren't you? You know.
Yes, I was. And they got their money's worth.
My father's waiting for you in the garden. Do it again. Hurt him. Make him say, "What to achieve?" I just wanted to hear him say, "Do more, just like I did."
Now, you've also had a pretty fruitful stage career. Talking about accessibility there a little bit. Many theatres are obviously based in older buildings, which makes accessibility tricky, especially behind scenes. So in what ways did they make theatre work more possible?
I think, again, it wasn't until my late 40s, and I'm in my early 50s now, that things were accessible. So from the age of 20 to 40, oh, sorry, 17 to 40, I was carried up downstairs like a bag of potatoes because, you know, there was no other way of getting me in and out of the building. And if you needed to go to the loo, you had to go to the front of house because there was no toilets backstage, and so on and so on. And now I can think of at least 15 theatres, main house theatres around the country that are accessible, but only through lottery grants and so forth and so on. I mean, one of my most enjoyable experiences happened at the Theatre Royal Stratford East, where I was the first disabled person to be in their panto in 2003. And that was only because they'd had a lottery grant to make the theatre accessible. So therefore they were ticking the boxes. Well, that's what I thought at the time. But then I discovered they'd actually interviewed, I think, over 1,000 people for the job. So I was very lucky. And then more recently, of course, I've worked much more in London, in central London, more recently at the Tristram Bates Theatre in Covent Garden.
What other London theatres have you worked in?
How long have you got? Quite
gosh.
a lot. I mean, my first job was at Riverside Studios when I was 17.
Right.
You know, literally I've toured all over the country and all over London, really. But the most enjoyable jobs within the theatre industry that I've worked on have been ones where it's a complete collaboration, whereby my disability is not the main issue. In the theatre and on stage, you are less blinkered by what you look like, because an audience will come and watch you and they will hold back. They will use their imagination to create the character that you create, and you take them on a journey. In a television studio or a film set, you are what the camera sees, and the camera sees what we're looking at now, this, and there's not much else really, unless you're in a long shot. Whereas in the theatre, of course, you have a much longer period of time to take the audience on a journey.
So you feel more positive about theatre in the way that you could play a non-disabled role. So you played Romeo, for example, one of your early roles. But you feel less positive about the way TV has cast.
How can I put this as nicely as I possibly can? I was cast as a young man to struggle against my disability, to be angry against the world. I was cast in my late 40s on the BBC soap opera Doctors to play a rugby star who wasn't disabled, who had become disabled, who then took his life. So really, within that journey, there hasn't been that much development. We need to get to the point where scripts are written and casting directors and producers and writers and everybody involved doesn't just write the disabled character to tell the story of their illness. They are there to carry the journey forward within the story, and their disability or their impairment is not the main focus.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more as someone with a disability myself, so I'm sure we've got a lot of common ground here. So do you feel that we are beginning to cast more disabled people in those non-disabled roles, as it were?
I think I'm very fortunate. I think I've been very fortunate because I've cultivated a small number of very talented writers and directors that know my ability and know what I'm capable of, and therefore come to me now. But after 36 years, if they're not knocking on your door, then you've definitely done something wrong. So I think I'm very lucky, and I will never, ever, ever complain. As my dear friend Katie said, nobody forces you to do this job. And if it gets too difficult, then don't do it. Yeah. But you're here because you love to do it, and that's it. But I do believe it comes from the top. those decisions about casting, whether it be gender, whether it be sexuality, whether it be race, whether it be disability, it all comes from the top. And it's still, until it starts from the top down, then things aren't going to change. And yes, they're changing very slowly, but they're incredibly slowly, I think.
Yeah, so I guess the majority of roles you have played have been roles that have been written as a disabled character, rather than you've auditioned for a character that's any other character.
On screen, most definitely. Yeah. Apart from the one that I've recently done for the National Film School, where I did Graham Whittaker for Alan Bennett's Talking Heads, because of course I'm sitting in an armchair, so you can't see that I have a disability.
Yeah.
And that was a deliberate decision that myself and the director, Emma, decided to take.
She was doing this bit of a dodge, and I said, "Ma'am, let go of my arm." And the next thing, I didn't really wrench it, but the next thing I know, she was flat on the pavement, and I said, "Oh my God, Mother." People gathered round, and I picked up her bag. And she sits up and says, "Oh, I've loaded both my stockings." I said, "Never mind your stockings, what about your pelvis?" She said, "It's these bifocals. They tell you not to look down. I was avoiding some sick."
You mentioned the National Film School. I believe you've worked with them on a number of occasions. It sounds like that's quite a positive experience. And you've been working with some of the student filmmakers, I believe.
Absolutely. I believe that you have to start at the beginning, really, because if you get into creativity from a very early age, like I did, you break down barriers. And the young directors, whether they be theatre directors or film directors, they have the vision to see beyond what they see. And I've been working with them on and off really since 2000. And the roles that I've been given have been incredibly varied. And, you know, I'm very lucky.
You say incredibly varied. Are those some of those roles we were just talking about, in terms of they're not necessarily about disability or being a disabled character, they're just non-disabled roles?
No, I would say that only Graham really has been a non-disabled character.
Yeah.
The other ones were things like Whose Life Is It Anyway, based on the play, where I played the lead character in that. And then I played Richard III in Shakespeare's Villains. Actually, the first job when I was in 2020, it was a film called Two's Company. And it was about an incestuous relationship with a brother and sister. And that had nothing to do with his disability.
Yeah. And I guess you're saying that you'd like to see more of that the roles you play, or anyone with a disability plays, isn't necessarily going to be about their disability in an ideal world.
And what I'm saying, I suppose, is that you can't ignore it. Like, you can't ignore the fact that somebody's got one arm. You can't ignore the fact that somebody's got a black face. You can't ignore those things. So they're therefore part of the story, but they're not the main focus of the story. They're a sideline to the story. The main focus of the story should literally be the journey of the character that the writer has written.
And so I guess your advice to people that are now writing and thinking more about diversity is to write characters that are not necessarily disabled, but that could be part of it.
Write characters that anyone can play.
Yeah.
Whether they be disabled, whether they be gay, whether they be black, whether they be Asian, whatever they are, you shouldn't be blinkered by just the image of that person. It should really always boil down to this question, which I was asked many times when I was younger. Is it about the disability, or is it about your acting ability? And my answer has always been, you have to be able to act. And if you can act, then those prejudice or those barriers shouldn't exist. Unfortunately, even after all this time, they do exist. But you can't spend the rest of your life banging down the doors. You have to be brave enough to say, okay, this is your opinion, this is my opinion, and I'll prove you wrong. And I haven't politically set out on an agenda to prove anybody wrong. I've just been very, very fortunate to be supported by the right people around me, by a great support network within the community, and I've been working bloody hard for a long time.
You certainly have, judging by all the things you've mentioned, the plays you've been in, the roles you've taken. You know, you've had a very busy career, it seems, and all credit to you, because, you know, it's not easy. As you said, there's been challenges along the way. Out of your whole career so far, is there
it's not over yet. It's not over yet.
No, not by a long shot, I'm sure. What would you say was your most favourite role to date that you played, either on stage or on screen?
I think probably on screen, I would say, even though it's very much a typical, stereotypical role for me to play, because every time they want an actor to cry or make an audience cry, I get the job. So the job that I did on Doctors in 2012, and then it was repeated in 2014 because of demand, which is really nice. That one I really enjoyed, because even though it was only for one episode, he went on a really emotional roller coaster, and he was so far removed from my own self.
If you hadn't spotted it, I'd be dead now. I wouldn't be in so much pain. I wouldn't be in this chair. I wouldn't be here. That's why.
So you're a coward. Neve was 10. She's 16 now. You've had all this time together.
Look at me. I'm a prisoner. Neve is my jailer.
It's her birthday. Every year, for the rest of her life, this is all she'll remember. This is so selfish.
It's not selfish.
Of course it's selfish.
I would have done it years ago if I didn't think there was a risk of her being put into care. But there isn't now. She's an adult. She will inherit the house. Today is the day I will set us both free.
Brilliant. And what about stage roles? What was your best stage role, do you think?
Oh, that's really hard, because I've done so many. But the one that I suppose I'd say sticks out in my mind, purely because it's something I would never normally be cast as, was the role that I did in 2018 at the Albany Theatre Festival, and then the Arts Theatre, and then at the Tristan Bates, where I played a kind of embittered, prejudiced, bit of a dickhead, really, who wasn't very nice. He was a really nasty piece of work, beautifully written and a great company, but certainly nothing like myself. And for me to play that role every night was a joy, because I could literally leave myself behind.
That's brilliant. And that's actually interesting to hear, because a lot of disabled people often feel that they tend to be cast in roles that are more of a victim or an embittered person, you know, because life's dealt them a bad blow. They're, you know.
I think on screen, that's definitely the roles I've been cast in, and probably will continue to be cast in, because of what I look like. And that's fine. That pays the bills and it keeps me busy. But from a creative point of view and an artistic point of view, I will never, ever, ever not get better opportunities than I will in the theatre.
Yeah, so was your character, was he a little bit evil?
I think
everyone loves to play an evil character, don't they? Whether, you know, non-disabled or disabled?
Basically, sorry, I should have explained. It was from a play called The Lost Soldier, and it was to commemorate the First World War, 100 years of the First World War. And this man was a general in the army, and he came back with being paralyzed. And so he was very angry about that whole journey anyway. And as the play unravels, you see how complex and how embittered he is by his own life's journey. He lost a child, he loses his son, and so on and so forth. So it was very multi-layered, and therefore I had a lot to play with. But I would say that the disability was a kind of byproduct rather than the main product. The main product really was his inward battle that was going on in his head.
Yeah, it sounds a very powerful piece on many different levels, you know.
The audiences certainly liked it very much.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, you know. It sounds like it was a great character to play, that, you know, there was lots of complexities to his character. So
nobody liked me for a while, but I mean, you can't. It was quite. What was lovely is that I was able to escape completely into him, so it was nothing about me personally.
People need to remain in their place. Order must be upheld. There must be order. With men like me leading the way, I have a title and power. I was the best man for the job. I did it because it was right.
You mentioned earlier about returning to the London stage, and we've spoken about possible inaccessibility of stage for backstage, for people performing, you know, getting onto the stage, etc. How far do you think we've come in terms of the theatre? I think you said there's probably only about 15 that you could name.
I think London is particularly behind. I think the problem.
You'd say London is particularly behind?
Yes, I do. I really do.
Which is such a shame, isn't it? Because, you know, London is seen like the centre of, you know, drama and, well, centre of drama in real life, but, but nevertheless, you know,
it's seen as the capital. You know, it's seen as the capital centre, the cultural centre. Sorry, and therefore it's unfortunate that a lot of the main theatres I couldn't work in, and some of the smaller venues that I've worked in are still not 100% accessible. But if you let that lead you, you'd never go to work.
Yeah.
So therefore you have to say to yourself, do I want to spend my life touring, which I did up until I was probably end of my 30s. So I toured from 17 till 39, 40. And by the time I reached 40, I said, that's it. I'm not carrying a suitcase anymore. And I will go to work in one venue. It can be anywhere in the country, I don't mind, but it needs to be in one place for one period of time. And thank you very much, goodbye. I wasn't prepared to travel anymore, you know, having done it for such a long time. So I think as far as I'm aware, Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber is renovating his theatres as we speak, and has been doing during the lockdown. And he is very much behind the whole prospect of employing disabled artists. And he says that hopefully they're hoping to be ready by 2025.
That is certainly good news, and particularly saying he's very keen to make things accessible for employing disabled people within theatres.
Yes. It comes
because,
back to, sorry.
We've had legal legislation in place for a long while now, so front of house has always been more of a priority, hasn't it, in terms of getting theatres accessible for people to get into, to watch a show. But you know, obviously things are lagging behind backstage and getting onto the stage if you're a performer. So it's really good to hear that you know, plans are moving forward to change that.
They are moving forward, and if someone as big and as powerful as Andrew does it, they will all follow.
Yes.
That's how it works, you know.
Big up to Andrew Lloyd Webber. Thanks, Andrew. Keep it up. We have to mention COVID, I'm sorry, but you know, obviously it's had a huge impact on the arts industry over the last year. I mean, how has it affected your work, for example?
I had an audition in, I think, the beginning of February 2020 for the Royal Shakespeare Company. And that job was supposed to start in August of 2020. And that's been postponed now to 2022. And that would have been a long contract. So, you know, things changed. I've never been on so many bloody Zoom meetings and Zoom castings and you know, ever before in my life. And I am a natural performer and I'm become alive in a real audition setting. I'm not very good if you just stick me in front of a screen.
Yeah, I don't think you can ever replace being with the people in the room. But I'm hearing a lot from people that the Zoom auditioning is actually helping them to see more people more quickly. So there may be some positives come out of that.
What is good, I think, is that I've been able to use my voice much more, because I've done a lot of radio recordings during this time. And that's something I'd never really thought of. I recorded my left foot back in my mid-20s for radio, BBC Radio 5. And I put the radio thing on one side because I said, no, I want to be an actor, I want to be seen and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm much more comfortable using just my voice, having done a few more radio productions during this time.
We're coming to the end of this now, Mark, but I would like to just give you a couple more questions. Firstly, with all your experience, which is great, what advice would you give to a performer sort of starting out now, whether they're disabled or not?
I would say follow your instincts and be true to yourself. Yes,
good advice.
Yes, get advice and get support, but actually you cannot beat going out there and learning on the job. I think there's a lot of good to be learned from going to drama school, and there's a lot of bad that can be learned from going to drama school. I think at the end of the day, it's about, when you're young and you're starting out, it's about grabbing every opportunity with both hands and giving it a full 110% commitment, really.
Brilliant. I think that sounds like excellent advice for anyone. And finally, so what is next for you? What have you got in the pipeline?
I'm very, very excited to say that I start rehearsals in middle of June, once the next COVID thing is lifted, on an outdoor production of The Sound of Music.
Brilliant.
And that's going to be in the Cotswolds. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That is amazing. Oh, isn't it going to be great to get back to having live theatre, you know, and being able to, you know, go out there and see shows again, like The Sound of Music, the iconic Sound of Music.
I think I'm very, very fortunate. And I think I'm very lucky. And I think that the fact that it's outside, obviously people will feel a lot safer to come and see. And I can't wait, really. I really can't wait.
No, I'm sure it'll be another amazing tick box in your career. Good luck with that anyway, Mark. And I hope you really enjoy getting back to doing that after all this time off, as it were, over the last year.